Hello and welcome back to At the Power Table podcast, where we are breaking barriers and building the future together. Today we have Josh Robertson, who is the founder and host of Engineer Career Podcast and project developer at SSENT Transmission. Josh and I met because when I started At the Power Table podcast, I reached out to him to let him know that, hey, I am starting a podcast and it's not exactly the same as yours. So we're not in competition. But just to let you know that this is coming. And he has been incredible since. We've become, I would say, really good friends. He is a treat of a human being. We talk about all the amazing stuff that Josh is doing to enhance the energy sector and to close the systems gap. And normally I would say skills gap. Josh has called it the systems gap. But when you listen to it, you'll see why it makes complete sense. As always, please subscribe, follow us on social media, and let us know what you think. Enjoy! Excited?
This is really weird. What's going on?
What did you have for breakfast today, Josh?
The amount of people have asked me this today.
Oh, really?
This is the opening question I get when I'm in Mother Studio.
Fuck off. That's my opening question. It's supposed to be like a calming.
I had for breakfast today a black coffee and I had a almond croissant, which is a sign of where my health is at the moment.
I mean, you're traveling, so it's okay. It's perfectly okay. Why have lots of people asked you this question today?
So when you're in the podcast studio at Pod Shop in London, the question is, when they're doing their sound levels, is what have you had for breakfast? And what's terrifying is when it's the same question and I give the same answer each time, which is worrying.
And I have to get better stuff in breakfast. People keep asking me what I have for breakfast.
I really need to start going back to the avocado and poached eggs, but that will come. Or maybe just nothing, a black coffee.
I don't know. I love breakfast. Breakfast is my favourite meal of the day, so I try to do.
I enjoy eating.
Yeah, same. Well, welcome to At the Power Table podcast, Josh. It's incredible to have you here. Josh Robertson is one of my favorite people in the energy industry. He's given me a talk about how I shouldn't inflate and doesn't like name dropping. Yeah, I literally start straight off with like, oh my God, he's amazing.
Oh no, please don't.
Truly, he is. He works at SSE. He's the development project manager for SSE Transmission. Yes, that is correct, for SSE Transmission. And then he also is doing really incredible stuff. He runs his own podcast, Engineer a Career, and then has a million other things that he does, which I'm not going to try to explain. I'm going to leave that for him to explain. But Josh, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. We finally got here.
No, it's been forever.
It's really exciting and it's slightly daunting being a guest for the first time on a podcast, but I can't think of a better podcast to be coming on to kick things off. So
I think it's kind of annoying that you're daunted by the fact that you're the first time as a guest, because you're so freaking awesome. You're probably going to shoot ratings up and you're like, oh, this is so hard, but you're going to be amazing. No, I'm not worried about it.
Oh, you're putting a lot of pressure on now. Let's not talk ratings. Oh, no. We need that AI, the AI tool you used to introduce the podcast, just to replace me, and then you'll have a great podcast.
Once, but
I loved it.
But did you love it?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
It was kind of creepy. It was like molding my voice and Courtney's voice and everyone's voice.
I loved it.
Like, oh, I don't sound like that, but okay.
Good.
Josh, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your career and how you got into the energy industry.
Yeah, my name's Josh. I'm an engineer. I studied mechanical engineering at university. So in Glasgow, you've got the University of Glasgow, you've got Strathclyde University, and you've also got Glasgow Caledonian University. So I studied at Glasgow Caledonian University. Graduated 10 years ago, which is fun. And the course is computer-aided mechanical engineering, so it's a version of mechanical engineering focusing on using software such as finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamics, which is all fun stuff. And over my career, I've worked for a couple of companies in defence. I've worked within a wee bit of civil nuclear and manufacturing, so companies like Altrad Babcock, Babcock International. And I now work for SSEN Transmission as a project manager. So yeah, that's the kind of my story into the energy industry. I've dabbled with. It's funny because when you think about the energy industry, I think today it's quite a hot topic. The energy industry. I'd left university and joined Doosan Babcock, which is now Altrad, and I worked in nuclear and oil and gas. You could argue that was the energy industry, but now it seems like it's a real industry, in which sometimes people just think about renewables, but there's a real energy mix that you can discuss. So yeah, I've kind of had my foot in a couple of companies, and yeah, see it within quite a strong light now at SSE.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I know you're doing lots outside of those many different companies. Tell us about that, but briefly, so we can deep dive in later.
Yeah, so I've got my own business called Engineer a Career, which is like it's like my baby, and I love it. Basically, Engineer a Career was set up because I want to connect engineering talent in universities and colleges with opportunities. And we have a podcast called Engineer Career Podcast. We do live events, so we do live podcasts, but we also do events in universities across Scotland. And we also have the Talent Network, which is a community. We've got a student ambassador network across Scotland, which is students who are in university courses studying engineering who have an association to engineer a career. So yeah, the main kind of premise for engineer a career is to support the skills gap, to show industry that we've got talent within our education systems that can be contributing now, and it's trying to drive a wee bit of change across industry.
It's really, really cool. And you said probably one of my favorite words. Well, not a favorite word, but favorite things to discuss, the skills gap. So tell us in your opinion, what you think the skills gap is in the energy industry.
Well, this is when I'll get cancelled, yeah. So my opinion on the skills gap is, I talk a lot about the system gap, but if you focus on, I guess, the question you've asked in terms of the skills gap is made up of a number of different contributing factors, which you can start off with that. There's been a number of reports and pieces of work done on this by institutes, etc., that there's essentially going to be a major drop-off of engineers and technicians in construction across the UK because of essentially those retiring. So up to 20% of the workforce by 2026, one paper will outline. And then also then you run to that and a steady increase in the projects that you and I know about that are taking place within, for example, within transmission and distribution and within nuclear, within all the different areas of the energy industry and wider afield. So that is increasing the demand for engineers and construction workers, etc. And then also you've then got other opportunities such as an increase in data engineers, AI, and in the projects that they're bringing. The skills gap is essentially this cocktail across it all. My take on it, I look at it in a different light, as the system gap, which, as I've kind of touched on already, is the ability for industry to recognise that we can bring in the engineering talent. So when I talk about the talent, as in the next generation of engineers, those who have actively chose to be engineers and study it or train to be it, use them earlier. So what does that mean? That means the tasks which not everyone may get excited about in the workplace can be carried out by students. They are capable, incredibly talented young people across every university, because I've been one and I know how it works and I've seen it. And there's an opportunity to build a system that doesn't just necessarily rely on graduate schemes, internships and work placements to allow the engineers to engineer and allow the next generation to get exposure to work and to support where required. And there's a massive opportunity for us to do that.
I freaking absolutely love that. So I really love the shift between skills gap to systems gap. And I think there's just, for me, just some teasing now to do in terms of that. So when you say bringing in engineers earlier into the system, love the concept. Are we talking just energy industry, or are we talking broader than energy industry? Because as an engineer, you're not just limited to the energy industry, right?
Yeah, I'm not limited to just the energy industry. It's across the board. So you can either look at it as an organisation, or you can look at it as sector by sector, or you can look at it as the industry itself. From biomedical engineers to civil engineers, from electrical engineers to mechanical engineers, and the full and chemical engineers. And I don't want to leave anyone out because I know I'll get you forgot that. But yeah, right across the board, I cover it. It's just, I guess, that energy is this podcast. But from defence to construction, from construction that isn't necessarily related to energy, to automotive, you name it.
It's the kind of vision that's so big, it's exciting, but it's also freaking scary. So it just makes you want to stay seated because it's like, whew, that's a huge task. Because you're talking about beyond energy industry, reimagining and shifting the way we engage with early entrants, which is freaking phenomenal. I love it. So staying on the energy industry, because I will be woefully outside of my comfort zone if I'm talking about defense. What are the things you're doing that's helping to shift into that vision?
So I think you mentioned something just before that I'm going to jump into, and then you might have to ask the question again so I don't get down one just completely lose the path.
Rabbit hole.
So absolutely. You mentioned engagement.
Yeah.
So think about careers as treat careers like an engagement opportunity. and not a recruitment problem.
Yeah.
So we treat talent like it's a recruitment problem instead of an engagement opportunity. So you think about any sector, how do you engage? So if you just, I know it is daunting to think about the engineering industry as a whole, but let's just take engineering as a whole. Why not? But why not? Because it's still engagement. It's still telling the right story to the right people at the right time and where they are, and create that vision for where they can be in their career. So it doesn't matter if it's the energy industry or if it's another sector, or I always say sector and industry. It doesn't matter what sector it is. So how do we do engineer career? In the most basic form, we produce a podcast and we share the stories of today's engineers with tomorrow's. So what does that mean? I bring a guest on and I talk to them about their career. And it's great because as a standalone guest, they get to share why they picked engineering in the first place, who it was that helped trigger that spark. They then talk about their route into it, then the companies they've worked for, the projects they've worked on, their mentors and their role models. And the whole part of that is to humanise the career path. So that as a student, particularly someone that's at college, university, who, and particularly right now, if you think about the month we're in, September, October, November, these are months which, if you're in 4th or 5th year at university, or the end of your university and you're looking for jobs, it can be a really daunting time. Because it's application processes, it's trying to juggle your jobs, your studies, and trying to find a job. It's a tough time. So the whole idea of the podcast is to humanise it, try and create that believability and show talent that where they can be. So the podcast evolved into events, another form of humanising the connection. So we go round the Scottish universities and we do live podcasts for the universities that are interested. So we started at the University of Dundee last year, and we bring in an alumni in, so someone that's graduated from the university, and they share their story. And we bring a podcast studio with us and we record, and it's great fun. And that's another form of it. So we've done Dundee University, the University of well, it depends when this is going out. We're going to have done University of Edinburgh, University of Glasgow, and we've done Glasgow Caledonian University, and that's the run of the events. We also do summer sessions, so we go into universities in the summer and do events, bringing students in and helping create that picture of what a career is. And it's to install all the human traits. It doesn't really matter if it's engineering or not. It's, you're required. This is where you can go. Listen to people who have been in your shoes before and really harness that energy so that when you're going through your studies, you can see where you can go. And then we've kind of pivoted from just the podcast and the events, and we've created what's called the Talent Network, which there's a number of different organisations that will have their own talent networks, mainly companies that want to have like a recruitment pipeline. But essentially our talent network is a bespoke platform which engineering students can join. And what they can do is they can engage with one another. So whether it's University of Glasgow students or students from, I've got students from some universities in Wales, students, some from around the London area, because I've obviously been here quite a bit over the last few months, but mainly in Scotland. We've got students from all universities and they get to speak to one another. They also get to do live Q&As with engineers and with myself, get to answer the questions that they maybe don't get the opportunity to ask, or maybe don't feel comfortable asking them and maybe through LinkedIn or etc. And we've also just recorded a bank of masterclasses which are going to be rolled out across that. And the aim is to have for that to be across the UK. So Scotland at the moment, and then from next year it's going to be across the UK, which is fun, doing it on your own. But then how to expand that? Well, there's a really good option was to have a student ambassador network. So we've got students at almost every university in Scotland, so 15 at the moment, who are our ambassadors on campus. What is that? In the simplest way, it shows the engineer career are connected to the next generation of engineers. We're connected anyway. We're connected through all our different mediums, but the network is exactly that connections. Whether it's Ella Woodburn at the University of Dundee, whether it's Moise, who are the engineer careers ambassador at the University of Strathclyde, whether it's Rebecca Wilson at Glasgow Caledonian University, whether it's Perry at University of Edinburgh. We've got them everywhere, and it's what that allows engineer careers to do is to hear the pain points. What are the pain points that students are feeling and seeing as they build their career, from why can't I get an internship to I'd like to get this organisation and connect with this organisation, or would like to hear more about the projects and the people and the culture of organisations. So many problems I hear and feed it back into organisations that we're connected with, which is great, but also the other way around, that Engineer Career can feed our messaging back through into students, whether it's through messaging that you've got, Zenobia, through the podcast, or whether it's through organisations that want to reach out to Engineer Career, like our partners at the Energy Institute, who have got a free student membership that we can feed into the students, or whether it's the work we're doing with ACOM and their opportunities, or whether it's postgraduate opportunities, another one of our partners at the University of Strathclyde. The opportunities are endless through that comms channel, and almost the Student Ambassador Network, its very basic form, is actually answering some of the problems which students are identifying, which is, why do organisations not want to connect with us at a human level through our studies? So that's why Engineering Career has been created. Yeah, but that's kind of the main kind of how we approach it at the moment. Lots of other things in the pipeline, because there's not one way of connecting with talent, and with the next generation of engineers. And if there's an option, then I'll give it a go.
I am just struck back. Like, firstly, absolutely freaking incredible. Like, you are absolutely fucking incredible. If no one's told
I love how they're swearing this podcast. This is awesome. I never swear on my podcast, but I swear all the time when I'm not on a podcast.
You know, it's my own podcast, so I can do it.
Exactly. Well.
So I absolutely do that. Honestly, you are amazing. I will not swear because apparently that doesn't.
No, you can swear all you want. I love it. I'm used to it.
Honestly, like, wow. Like, super, super wow. I love just how robust it is. How, like, solid, how you've literally feet on the ground to understand the pain points, a space for people to join, and then that next level of let's humanize it so that people can actually join. And I think for me, the question, I'm not saying you have to have this solved, because I already feel like you have so much on your plate that I just want to be like, oh my God, he's exhausting me. And I'm not even doing any of the work. Like, we will get there. I have a question on that. But just in terms of that, for me, the layers that are missing is the business layer, because obviously we need businesses to change how they engage and how they change their processes and how they need to do stuff differently. And I think if you speak to most people in the energy industry, they'll tell you that to try and change processes, non-technical processes in the energy industry, is very, very difficult, because the answer is always, well, we've done this like this before, so why would we change it? And then there's also the level of government and industry bodies. I'm really keen to understand your perspective of how you see those different parties playing a role in this, if any role, and what your experience has been so far of like those parties and their reactions to this.
Yeah. So to start off with the processes needing changing or not changing, I think, I'll put it bluntly, we're in this problem situation just now with the processes we've got. So to me, you either change the processes or you continue doing what you're doing and the problems get bigger. Now, that's not to say there's not amazing work taking place. And that's the important part, because I guess if you look at my LinkedIn, you might see a lot of positivity that I've talked about, but there's also some negative things that I'll talk about, such as like the growing unemployment rate between 16 and 24-year-olds in Scotland at the moment. Yet, from my perspective, there seems to be opportunities, or more opportunities than ever since I've been in the industry. So there's clearly something not right. So in terms of how they all work together, so I mean, there's amazing organisations across the UK that are all individually and collaboratively doing amazing work, and you can start at institution level. So Royal Academy of Engineering, they've got a number of amazing schemes that are and enterprises and that essentially is supporting, maybe not necessarily just addressing the skills gap, but whether it's the EDI or whether it's looking at increasing the number of women in engineering. From my own institution, the IMechE, are doing a lot of good work, but then even organisations like Ingenuity, who are a charity who are focused on the manufacturing engineering skills gap. In Scotland, you've got like the Developing Young Workforce, you've got companies like Smart STEMs that try to spark the STEM mindset in young people. Empowering Futures, who I know very well, do amazing work in Scotland to essentially identify and to help young people identify and develop their meta skill sets, which is interpersonal skills, etc. So that there's a lot of good work that takes place. I just see that it's maybe not all brought under the same banner, and maybe that's simplifying it too much or looking at it too simply, but maybe I'm a simple person. You know, if you can sit around the room with all of these organisations and bring together a system which brings it together, removes profitability, removes the business element of it, and thinks about long-term strategic workforce planning, then I think you have an opportunity. Now, again, that's not to say that that's not happening either, but from what I see, and I would say that I'm quite well immersed within the world of skills, I don't know if it is necessarily happening at the level I'm at, which is somewhere in the middle. I mean, I don't get in front of or don't sit at the top seats. But, when I'm in London, I get to meet the people that I would like to hope I meet and get the right discussions going, which to me is a really good sign. There's young Josh, wee Josh, kicking around with engineer career and can get in front of people in London, which to me is quite an interesting dynamic, and it's something that I talk about a lot at the moment. So the vision I have for all of this, and it's not for engineer career, it's a vision for the UK, is we need to get all of the systems or all of the processes that we have, and we have to simplify it down to the point of, for any one individual that has an engineering mindset, I would class it as, and we've found that engineering mindset, how can we get the right opportunity in front of them in the simplest way? So is it university? Is it college? Is it a traineeship? Is it an apprenticeship? And that might sound really simple, but if we don't get it that simple, we will continue to have skills gaps, and we'll continue to, we will not benefit from the opportunities that we know we have coming forward. And yeah, that's what I'll keep fighting for.
Yeah. I a lot to unpack there. I think I find myself agreeing, and I'm like, ooh, and then I agree, and I'm like, ooh.
Go for it.
To unpack.
Yes, here we go.
Fun. So I agree. I think for me, that whole we need a holistic solution is kind of like a UK mistake we keep making, and then we never ever learn from. Like, I feel like that was a few years ago, we were saying we need an integrated strategy. We need to figure out all holistically what we're doing together. And the integrated strategy only landed just about a few months ago. And now no one is talking about that. And then skills was always at the back foot of all the other bigger problems we had. And now it's kind of coming to the forefront, kind of. I still don't think skills is at the forefront of the conversation where it needs to be in terms of broader energy industry issues. But it's coming more to the forefront. And I think, again, we get into that like storming phase where people are kind of doing stuff in pockets, and we're starting to collaborate, but it isn't that whole, here's an integrated strategy for the skills sector or the skills and what we're going to do from a UK perspective. I did see, I forget the institution name, which is terrible because the report's really good. The skills strategy for 2025-2030. It's Paul Cox and his team. I think it's like energy and utilities something. It's a very interesting report. I think it isn't the integrated strategy. I think it is a way forward, but it's very interesting. So I think for me, the points that you made around we need a skill strategy, and it needs to happen without considering profit and everything else.
So that's not a business level I'm talking about. I'm talking about when it comes to, I mentioned all the different organisations who are involved in the supporting the skills. So when it comes to getting around the table and trying to get opportunity for young people, to me it's about how do you get those opportunities in front of them. It shouldn't be about a business making money out of it as the primary goal. I understand businesses, how they work. I've engineer career as a business. So yeah, I guess more widely what I'm meaning is I think we have to get the right organisations, the ones that I mentioned, round the table, and think about how do we get the workforce into the system in the most efficient way. Yeah. That has to be the primary. That has to be number one. Yeah. Because most organisations in the UK that need engineers will have it within their risk register, workforce planning. Yeah. So you have to put the right focus on it. And I think to address another point that we were kind of covering there is around previous work that's been done on skills and workforce planning is, from what I've seen, and again, I've seen it through a number of different angles, and I mentioned this the other day on a podcast. So I've seen it from the angle of a student. I've seen it from the angle of a student wanting a job. I've seen it from the angle as a graduate, as a early career engineer, as an engineer, as a chartered engineer, as a manager who needed to recruit and they're a project manager. So each one of them has different perspectives on getting the job or getting the resource, particularly if you're a project manager and you need to get a job done. The challenge I have always seen is that the people that we seem to miss out once we do the strategies is the actual people we're trying to bring into industry. And this is your previous podcast number 10 that we discussed with Courtney, what I loved, because you started to talk about the energy industry and it had parallels with getting engineers into industry. It's about telling the right story. And, when you have a lecture theatre or a room, whether it's 5 students or 100, and you can sell to them where they can be, the complexity of the engineering, the projects, and really spark the minds of the talent that we're trying to get into industry, that's where the opportunity is. Salaries and where the job is are all part of that as well, but students picked engineering because they want to engineer. So in industry, we should talk about the engineering and talk about the challenge around it, because just that's what students are doing at that one moment. They're in university and they're doing engineering, and that is the opportunity we have, and I think we don't do it well enough. So there's a huge opportunity to get around colleges, get around universities, and it might sound like a lot of work, but if I can do it through a couple of universities on my own, think about the opportunity you can do if you can pull all the organisations together.
I think that's a really solid case. And I again, from this report that I cannot remember the institution, and that's terrible of me. One of the things, and I don't have the answer to this, is a reflection. I just read it and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I need to mull over it. But now that you're here, I definitely want to get your perspective. It was, the report said something around one of the things that would make the industry more attractive is clear career progression, which I thought was really interesting, because I don't quite know if there's if that's exciting, or I don't know if that's the right answer. I think it's interesting that people are asking for clear career progression, and I want to know exactly where I'm going to end up, because to me, I don't, and I think that's part of the adventure. I'm yeah, I'm a dabble here, I'm a dabble there, let's see where that ends up. So very keen to get your perspectives.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've actually not read that one before or heard it, and I guess from a personal point of view, I've always looked at my own career as it's in my own hands. Doesn't really matter if someone kind of lays out to me a grand plan. I've always found empowerment to take my career to where I think it needs to be. And I think that's also a consistent theme that I hear across the podcast when I meet engineers. I spoke to so many engineers, obviously, in the last 20 months, and I've done it even before that, before my career. And I don't think, apart from maybe in the Royal Navy, where it's a bit more, that's kind of structured in terms of your kind of gradings, and there's not many industries or companies that I've either worked in or been aware of that, engineers are joining it because they know within a 2-year period that they're going to become a senior engineer, and then 3-year period they're going to be a principal engineer. To me, that's an interesting one. I think there's definitely other areas we could be putting effort into, which I'm sure we'll touch on, in terms of, you can't be what you can't see and all that good stuff, that we really need to be making more of an effort into.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I need to disclaim my full statement. It is Friday evening, so maybe I read it wrong. Maybe I need to go back and read it, but it's definitely something that I was like, really interesting that we're asking for clear pathways. So yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I did think that was interesting.
I mean, as an engineer, and again, this is a comms thing. As an engineer, when you enter industry, if you're not a member of an institution, that would be my advice, is the first thing to do. And this is what the chat I was having yesterday with the Engineering Council. When I joined university, it was the IMechE. I joined it within the first 2 months, and I'm 15 years later, I'm a chartered engineer. Now, the chartership part is irrelevant. I'm a member of the institute that has professional standards that you can work towards, and whether you have a degree or not, there is Eng Tech, there's incorporated engineer, there's chartered engineer. You then get fellow after that. But if you were, as an engineer starting your career, to print off the UK spec that has 5 competencies in it, A, B, C, D, and E, and the way I like to explain it high level is A is like technical, and it then kind of goes down, E towards your more interpersonal, sustainability linked, ethics, etc. That should be every engineer's. If you're producing a personal development plan, you can always fall back on that. So if you're an engineer and you're thinking about that you want to join an organisation that's going to tell you that they're going to get to a certain position, maybe don't look at it from that perspective. Look at it from this perspective: what can you control and how can you measure that? And the UK spec is, to me, the way you do that from, regardless if you're a chemical, mechanical, civil, biomedical, etc. So that's kind of, I guess, my perspective on that.
I think that's really solid, really useful advice, especially if someone's starting off and you're just overwhelmed of what should I do? How do I manage myself? How do I position myself? Because that's something they tell you in your early career, build a brand, and you're like, yeah, I agree. So I think just then broadening that conversation in terms of the what should we be doing that we aren't already doing. So there is brilliant pockets of stuff, and I mean, it's hard to ask you this question because, like, whatever you think you should be doing or whatever you think should be done, you're already doing all by yourself. But yeah, tell us.
I mean, there's a lot. There's so much we could be doing, and it's I guess it's hard not to start off with the statistics around women in engineering, and it's quite interesting and around this. So when I was going into engineering or looking at my career back when I was in school, my dad is an engineer. My brother's an engineer, and my aunt's an engineer, and so is my cousin. So my dad's cousin, so my cousin as well. And so I always looked up to my dad, my brother, and my aunt and my cousin. My dad went the apprenticeship route, if you want to class it as that. I don't think it was called apprenticeships back in the 80s, but traineeship, age 16, into a drawing office and became a draftsman, then a leader and a manager across the construction industry. And my brother followed that with the apprenticeship route as well, and similar organisations, and kind of like CAD and draftsman and kind of all that good stuff. But as someone that was coming through, first person in my immediate family who'd been to university, naturally I kind of gravitated towards my aunt and my cousin, who both went to university. I guess it's a long story to explain. Two of the four of my idols, my role models, were women, and it wasn't until I entered industry that I began to realise that there isn't as many women in engineering. I almost didn't think about it like that. I mean, when I think back to university, there was, I think, two females out of a heavily dominated male class, and maybe 80. But yeah, as a perception, it was never something until I joined industry. The angle I come at opportunity is there. We're at 17% in industry, which is a lot better than it was, but nowhere near what it needs to be. So I think it's incumbent on any male in engineering to think about what they can do. And by no means am I perfect. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Authority Gap, which is all about the kind of ingrained biases within society. I've got two wee girls. I've got a sister who's an engineer. I feel it's my responsibility to do what I can, both from a behavioural point of view and from an outreach point of view, to show that anyone can be an engineer. That's quite a kind of big statements in there. How I do that, I don't actually know, because I don't ever want to look like someone that's, just doing it because it maybe seems like it's the right thing to do. I do it because I genuinely believe that anyone can be an engineer. And forget about what I believe, I've seen anyone can be an engineer. And then that goes past the kind of the gender split of engineering. Anyone can be an engineer, and I've seen that through my link into my own career. I've seen people join apprenticeships who clearly got an opportunity. School wasn't for them, and now they're working all over the world being engineers. And I've also seen people do the more, as I call it, the linear route, which is through university. So there's all these different routes and ways of becoming an engineer. So I believe that anyone can be an engineer in the engineering industry, within the construction industry. So therefore, when you've got that belief and that burn inside you, you need to be talking about it, because not everyone does. If more people did, and you create more noise, the story changes. So I just see there's an opportunity around all of that. And there's my bag falling off.
Because it was such a mic drop moment.
And I hope that came across right, because I'm very conscious of how I am, and it's probably a weak point that I personally have, is the topic around women in engineering is such an important topic. And my aunt, and I wanted to mention this, my aunt says to me this, because I wrote an article earlier in the year called "The Face of Engineering," and the point of it was International Women's Day. So my daughter was born International Women's Day. I spoke about perception of the topic, and I wrote the article, and I was like, right, I don't want to come across. I was just worried about what it would come out as, and so I sent it to my aunt, and my aunt read it, and she came back and said, "Josh, it's great, put it out." She says, "But Josh, just for clarity, you'll never understand this." And that was a really powerful thing for my aunt to say to me, or my cousin say to me, sorry. And she's absolutely right. I'll never understand it. But what I can do with what I would class as a small following, what I can do is I can use my platform to demonstrate the amazing engineers that I see, and that's male and female, and that's what I do in the podcast. So you'll notice that I get loads of amazing guests, male and female. And I always say this, and I don't really talk about it much, but I've never, ever, ever had a woman engineer say no to me on the podcast to come on. But I've had plenty of guys say no. which is
That
an
is
interesting
cool.
one. So yeah, it's just
Very
interesting. I don't know why that is, but that's just it's
Very
interesting.
so people should go back and find that article and definitely read it because it's a brilliant article. I read that article, and at the beginning of the podcast, I started off saying you're one of my favorite people in the energy industry. It's because of that article.
Awesome.
After I read it, I was like, oh wait, I actually like this dude. I agree with your cousin in the sense that you would never be able to understand it in the same way as how either of us would never be able to understand an experience of someone who's of a different ethnic background. We'd never be able to understand, but that empathetic willingness to listen and learn, and important for me is that willingness to action and play your part in it is the in my opinion, the best approach you could probably take.
I agree. That's exactly it. Yeah,
Shivers.
I agree. Definitely.
I've been dying to ask you this question. I have reflected on the question of, is it the appropriate question to ask? Because most often, like in interviews, and this is outside of energy interviews in its entirety, is always females get asked this question and not males. But it's a very appropriate question of, you have engineer a career, you have a full-time career at SSC as a project developer, you have the talent network, you have the student ambassador network, you have 2 wee girls, you have a family, you have a partner. Also, you have stuff in the pipeline. How on earth do you manage all of it?
Through amazing support. So yeah, those close to me provide the, I guess, opportunity for me to do what I'm doing. I guess when those around me have seen what it started as, which was, engineer career written down with a blue background, writing articles that no one wanted to read, to kind of get a wee bit of traction. I think that gives you a wee bit of leeway. But definitely those who are closest to me supporting me. I think you mentioned all the things that are under engineer career. I look at them, all those things you mentioned, as engineer career. So I've got, I've probably got quite a boring life at the moment, in the sense that I do my job, I do engineer career, and I've got my family, and probably the orders: my family, engineer career, and my job. Yeah, when you find what makes you passionate about something, it gives you fuel that you probably didn't think you had before. I do a condensed week at SSE, so I work 4 days full time, and then a Friday I do engineer career work, and then I take holidays. SSE have been incredibly supportive to that flexible working arrangement, which I'm incredibly grateful for. So it's a kind of mixture of it all. I could spend a wee bit more time on, going to the gym and going and running and etc. to kind of clear my mind. But I think when you find your what you're passionate at, it unlocks pockets of energy that you probably didn't think you had. And I think that's what I say to students. If you can find what keeps you passionate about what you're doing in your career, then you'll use it as fuel when things are tough, and there's been plenty of tough times with engineering career.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm full of challenge today, apparently. But my challenge is, it's definitely not a boring life. It sounds more like a content life, which is really beautiful. Just as someone who's built that flexible arrangement with your career, and then building a business on the side, if you were to give advice to anyone who's interested in doing entrepreneurship in the energy sector, what would that advice be? Do it. If you've got an idea, then tell people about it. Because if you don't, then you'll be stuck in this kind of loop of, well, I try it, and you then get bogged down. Certainly in Scotland and across the UK, entrepreneurialism is something that we need to innovate, whether it's products or services or change, so we need it. So try it. And that goes for outside the energy industry, but particularly within the industry, if it's product based, there's amazing work. There's a lot of grants in place at the moment, whether it's through Innovate UK, Scottish Enterprise. There's amazing work that happens across the universities in the UK through innovations, and we need it. We need it more than ever. And so if you've got an idea, I would say do it, try it. You've heard the phrase fail fast. Like that's kind of what I've done, and I've pivoted quite a bit. Now, I don't have a glossy product. I wish I did, because it'd probably be a lot more successful. But if you've got a product, whether it's technology that's related to net zero, or whether it's a system, whether it's an AI product, an app, give it a go. And I'll be the first one to back you. There's a lot of support out there. I say this in Scotland, that there's a support mechanism for startups that I never knew was there.
And once you get into the space, it's another form of fuel, because you're with like-minded people who are going through the same challenges you are. You have the domain name. Are you trying to register a trademark? Have you got an accountant to do your accounts? Anything for your social media? Yeah, there's everything. You name it. So, and there's support for all of that out there. So I would say go for it. That's my bit of advice.
Yeah, that's probably the same advice I got when I started the podcast of just
You've got
do
it.
it. Just do it. If it sucks, it's okay. No one's gonna put it on your forehead and be like, you failed at XYZ. Just do it and try and see what happens.
Exactly. And you're doing that. And your podcast covers, to me, a part of you're doing for the energy industry, which I think that could be done for any sector. And the variety of guests' perspectives, from skills to technologies to all the different areas you're covering. So hats off to you.
I mean, hats off to you, like multiple hats off to you, because Engineer Career, you said, is not a glossy product. It is very much so a glossy product. So if you haven't listened to it, please do listen to it. It's incredible. And it's really just that human element, and it definitely comes through. So
thank you.
Definitely listen to Engineer Career podcast. Engineer Career.
That's
the
it.
podcast. Join the talent networks and reach out to the student ambassadors if you are in the universities. That's what they're there for. Have a chat. And definitely chat to Josh as soon as you see him, whether it's in London, Scotland, wherever he is. Definitely chat to him. My final question for you. If you were giving advice to wee Josh starting his career, what would that advice be?
Find what you love to do. Work out what you love to do. I say to students, think of you at the start of your journey as a big funnel. The more exposure you get to stuff, there'll be events, people, the more you can then bring your funnel in and find out where you want to go to. So I would say back to myself, be curious, connect, and find out, and just do what you love. And I'd like to hope I'm doing that now. I'm terrible at kind of maybe patting myself in the back at times, but that's probably the one thing I'm maybe proud of at the moment, is that I'm tiptoeing my way to probably doing what I love. That's I think when you do what you love, like I said, you find energy and ways of doing things when things are tough. I think if we all do what we love, then I think the world will be a better place.
It's been absolutely brilliant to have you on, Josh. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you. I told you that was a brilliant conversation. To be honest, when I left the recording, I was just so excited. I think I had probably one of the most productive weekends thereafter, because I'm just so energized by the conversation. Also, just as incredible, our next guest, Yasmin Ali, who is doing super phenomenal things in the industry, and I can't wait for you to have a listen. Okay, bye.